So what happened? So this Orientalism started originally in 1312 after the Crusades, a few centuries later. So we have to keep in our mind that when the wars came to their end, then intellectual, academic crusades started. After the state of war, end of the state of war, then there was a new history of crusade because of this war expanding up on the 2 centuries or more than that. So there was enmity had already been created between the cultures, Islam and the Christian world. And because of this inimical environment, they were biased, they were totally cut off from each other. And when they started, their minds were already biased, poisoned. And they started this thing with that inimical background, biased background. And these 3-4 centuries up till 20th century, I would say these centuries were the centuries of intellectual and academic crusades. It was commenced and its formal existence was announced as a decision of Church Council of Vienna in 1312. So we shouldn't forget the reality that the basic founder of the concept of Orientalism was the Church Council of Vienna. And they established a series of chairs in Arabic, Greek, Hebrew, Syriac, and Persian languages at Oxford and some other places, which practically could not come into existence for a certain time. Teachers were not available, material and books were not available, reliable source material, this was not available, there was lack of teachers. Finally, the actual start and commencement of Orientalism took place in 1632, 300 years later. They had been putting their efforts to establish the Orientalistic studies during these centuries. The Orientalistic studies actually started in 1632, and that started in England when Sir Thomas Adams' chair of Arabic was introduced. And this was at Cambridge University. And 4 years later, Archbishop established a similar chair at Oxford. Now you will see all founders of Orientalism. They were the active religious leaders of Christian community. Thomas Adams' chair of Arabic was initiated, and the people started studying Arabic and Persian, but again the teachers, proper teachers in Arabic were not available. So those who are working for Arabic chair, practically for all practical purposes, they converted their interests and their studies to Persian, and they started their links with Iran, with Persia. So the second important thing is that their first contact of European scholars, the Orientalists, to receive the knowledge, the first contact came into existence with Iran and not with the Arab world, not with the original Islamic sources. Then at Oxford, 1690, 1636, Thomas Hyde and some other professors, they started study in Zoroastrianism and they started study on the ghazals, poems of Hafiz Shirazi and Umar Khayyam, and so on, so forth. So this was the start of Orientalism, that their main interest and emphasis became in Persian language, Persian culture, Persian philosophy, and Persian poetry. You can read all these details in History of the Religion of the Ancient Persians, which was published in 1700, and it is recorded by Hyde. And another book, The Cambridge History of Iran, written by Jackson and Lockhart. So this is how, now I don't want to go further towards Persian studies. I wanted to just introduce how Orientalistic studies and Orientalism commenced, coming now directly to the study of Sunnah and study of Hadith in Orientalistic literature. So their first main concern, as I have already mentioned, always remained on the Persian poetry, Persian philosophy, Persian mystical philosophy, Persian culture, Persian Sufism. So all these became the reasons of wrong conclusion on Islamic Sufism and Islamic philosophy. So they were not able to differentiate between the two. As far as the study of Hadith and Sunnah in Orientalistic literature is concerned, it practically, this started in 1850, rather 1808. This was in the beginning of 19th century. The study of Hadith and Sunnah in Orientalistic literature started from the beginning of 19th century. So last 2 centuries, 19th and 20th century, they possessed the Orientalistic literature on Hadith and Sunnah. The first person who is known to be the pioneer of the Orientalistic studies on Sunnah and Hadith is Gustav Weil, who worked from 1808 to 1889. The second was Aloy. I am just giving a brief history of Orientalistic study on Hadith and Sunnah. Then I will come to their views. Second was Alois Sprenger, who lived from 1813 to 1893. Then Reinhard Dozy, from 1820 to 1883. All these 3 beginners or founders of Orientalistic studies on Hadith, all these 3, their conclusion was that Bukhari should be rejected. The most authentic compendium of Hadith should be rejected. These things were concocted, these were fabricated, these are not reliable. Why? We will come later on that. And this criticism was not only up to the extent of Hadith and Sahih Bukhari. They were criticizing primarily the originality, the genuineness, the truthfulness of wahi, of revelation, and prophethood of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. One thing on which we should be very clear is always keep in your mind, when you study the Orientalistic literature of these 2 centuries, last 2 centuries, just you can say 50 years before from today, some scholars and Western Orientalists came who were comparatively neutral, who started thinking positively, who started thinking in neutrality. They started disagreeing with their conclusions. But there were 2 main Orientalists whose influence continued throughout the history till today on all Orientalists. I will mention their names. the basic thing on when you study the Orientalistic studies, you should always keep in your mind that they don't believe in prophethood of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They don't accept him as a prophet. The Orientalists of those two centuries, they don't consider him as prophet. If they consider him as prophet, then they will believe in him. Then they will automatically believe in Quran. Then why would they remain against him? If at his time a man accepts somebody as prophet and messenger of Almighty Allah, and he accepts the truthfulness and genuineness of divine revelation communicated to him, he accepts that this book was really a divine revelation which was sent to the prophet. So then why would he criticize that Quran? Why would he criticize the contents of revelation if he accepts it as divine revelation? Because primarily they believe in God. They believe in revelation. Basic reason is that they don't believe in prophethood, because their concept is the godship or sonship. Their concept is divinity. They are not aware of, or used to the concept of prophethood, first of all. They don't consider Sayyidina Isa alayhi salam, Jesus Christ, as prophet or messenger. They consider him as God or son of God. So this was the basic thing. So they have no proper appreciation of the concept of prophethood and messengership, one thing. Secondly, about Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they didn't consider him as prophet and Allah's messenger. So they never had any faith in divine revelation. There was various people, and this person, Mr. Dozy, he was the one who declared that the moments when Holy Prophet ﷺ used to receive the divine revelation, there was no divine revelation. These were epileptic fits. So he has declared it as epilepsy. So you can imagine, particularly for those youngsters, those who depend and rely on these research works, they should be very clear that where this research is coming from, from which root and origin this research is coming from. If they are not believing in divine revelation, in Quran, in Wahi and prophethood of Holy Prophet ﷺ, then why would they believe in the truthfulness and genuineness of Hadith and Sunnah? Why would they believe that Sunnah is anything worth relying upon? Then why would they believe that it has any significance in Islam? So to them everything is fabricated. Prophethood is fabricated, maazallah. Wahi is fabricated, maazallah. So Hadith, tradition, Sunnah is fabricated, maazallah. So this is their viewpoint regarding the whole sum of Islam, not only the Sunnah. That's why they deny the authenticity of Hadith and authenticity of the chains and authenticity of the transmitters and authenticity of the science of Hadith and authenticity of the books, compilations of Hadith. Books and compilations. The reason is they don't believe in Sunnah and Hadith. Why? They don't believe in the person whom these Hadith and Sunnah are being related. They don't believe him as prophet.